All right, welcome back. As promised, I'm joined by Jess Root again from Revenge of the Birds, the great SB Nation Arizona Cardinals website. Jess, I'm just so sorry about that game. I'm still perplexed. Help us make sense of it.
Well, I don't know exactly what to think of it all. It took me a few days to finally just accept what exactly had happened. But it comes down to this. The Cardinals played as poorly as they could have, and Carolina played as well as they could have.
Yeah.
It was kind of the perfect storm. Carolina played really well, and then the Cardinals it's like they weren't prepared for the intensity that Carolina was going to bring. And they talked about it all the previous week about they have to start well. It's that first quarter that's going to set the tone, and that's exactly what happened. Because Carolina plays really well. They played really confidently when they're ahead early. Yeah. And then we had there was a turning point in the game, and it was when the Cardinals scored their first touchdown. They got a stop, and then you kind of felt okay. The Cardinals tend to, especially Carson Palmer has shown even he gets up a little bit. He's a little too amped up at the start of games or something, and the ball sails on him, and he doesn't not quite as good. Then he settles down. He never settled down. Yeah. On that punt where Patrick Peterson raced down the sideline and was trying to make a play, and it wasn't a dumb thing to do. He just didn't secure the ball, muffed ball. Then after that, the muffed punt really kind of turned things around.
I completely agree.
Everything after that. And then after that, when Peterson made the interception, took it way down deep, and then Carson Palmer threw the interception, it was at that point done, game over. There wasn't any chance after that.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I thought at that point, you're exactly right. Arizona had scored. They got the defense got a 3 and out. I thought momentum is finally starting to shift. I don't know that I agree that Patrick Peterson didn't make it done. When I was watching him, I had the fortunate occurrence to be able to cover that game, and I'm sitting in the press box, and I'm watching it. It's literally unfolding right in front of me because of where I was sitting in the press box and in relation to the field, and I was like, what is he doing? And about that point, the ball, because he was going so fast, and I was like, there's no way he's going to be able to field that. And but regardless, it was just a situation that it was really Arizona wasn't playing that well. It was very difficult for them to recover from it.
Yeah, and as we've seen with a couple other teams, and I've heard it compared to a couple of people. A guy that I share my podcast with, he's my co-host. He compared, really, if you look at Arizona's team this year and Carolina's team, and compared it very, very similarly to the Seahawks-Broncos Super Bowl, where you had a very prolific offense that just ended up getting obliterated by a very physical defense. They just never could. And even that Super Bowl, there was a moment. I mean, they had the safety early. They had, but it looked like there was about a drive where it looked like the Broncos might come back, and then they had a turnover, and that really just turned the tides completely. And maybe that's the thing moving forward is maybe the Cardinals will make some similar moves to, for lack of a better phrase, Palmer-proof the team like the Broncos did like the Broncos did. They basically made it Manning-proof on this drive. And that's how you end up with Peyton Manning going for his second ring in what is by far the worst year of his career.
Yeah. I want to ask you about Carson Palmer. I wrote about the game, and as much as you know how much I respect Carson Palmer and really appreciate what he was able to do this season, and I love Bruce Arians, Uncle Bruce. I think I made Uncle Bruce mad. As much as I like Carson Palmer, and as much as I hated to do it, I put the majority of the loss squarely on him. What are we to make of this? Of all the indications that maybe not, his finger had not healed, and give us your thoughts on his performance.
Well, he played poorly. I mean, that comes down to it. Now, And you have to put the line. That's kind of how the Cardinal season was going to go. Was going to go based on how Carson Palmer went. So either he was going to be great and they were going to be great, or he was going to play less than great and they were going to be less than great. That's how it was all season. So he deserves all of the blame that he's getting. Now, if you look at the season he had, I don't completely buy into the narrative where he is a playoff choker. And that's simply because I mean, obviously there is something there mentally when it comes to big games that he has a hard time settling down early. With the exception this year of in Seattle, because we saw it against Cincinnati, he was erratic early, then settled down. We saw it against Green Bay. He was erratic early, and he settled down. Against Seattle in Week 17, he was erratic, and then they pulled him, so he never had a chance to settle down. And against Carolina, he just never settled down. So it was a number of things. I don't, like I said, I'm not completely buying into the notion he's just a playoff failure, like he's just something mentally, because he just hasn't had the experience. I mean, that was I mean, aside for 2 plays in 2005, he had the 2009 playoffs, 1 game, and now 2. So it's not. I don't consider that enough of a reputation.
I don't either.
He's just not played well. So obviously he's not a big game quarterback. He steps up. But it was kind of a number of things. Palmer's year, he kind of played like Palmer does. But if you look at the first half, he played the way Palmer has played most of his career. He's one whose risk takes. And this year, what really made his year special is he put in a lot of preparation, so he did a lot himself. But there were a lot of things that went well. He was healthy. They had protection. He's comfortable in the offense. And then he had the offensive line that protected him better this year. However, we have a number of things working against him. He's very, very good when he can set his feet. He's very good under optimal conditions, and that's when you see elite play from him. When it's anything less than optimal, you see a much different Carson Palmer. And in this case, there's a number of things. One, I don't think the finger was a big thing as to how he threw the ball, but it clearly wasn't 100%. The fact that he's staying home for the Pro Bowl is another one. I honestly believe that dislocated is not actually the term that probably is the correct. I think he probably broke his finger and has been playing through it. I wouldn't be surprised to have that come out at some point.
Yeah,
you've got, number 2, you've got a defense that couldn't let him set his, and then he was hyped up for it, so he knows Carolina's the top. They consider they're the best defensive league. They're the best defense in the league, and so he never got to settle down. 3, his wife was 38 weeks. As of Sunday, 38 weeks pregnant, and he's across the country. That's something no one talks about, and you don't want to say, well, it's because of that. But it's just a number of little factors, and then you had it just fell apart. And essentially, you had the 2 early turnovers. And then after that, it didn't matter, because after that, he was trying to make plays, and that's what Palmer does. So he's trying to get the ball down the field, and, he's just not. He's making dumb throws. He's making ill-advised throws just because he's trying to do too much.
Yeah, he was. He was not seeing the field all that well at all. He was under pressure a lot. What is your assessment of how the offensive line played in that game?
Offensive line didn't play well. They were completely dominated, especially the right side of the line was dominated by that Carolina line. And it made things worse because Carson was feeling pressure that wasn't there. There were times when he was feeling pressure that wasn't there, and he wasn't aware when the pressure was getting, that leading to those fumbles, leading to the one interception in the end zone that was because his arm got tipped just a little bit.
Are you still with me?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and and it was a surprise to me. I knew that Carolina's defense was good. I've watched them all year, but I've watched the Cardinals too, and I thought their offensive line was better than they played in that game. Yeah,
it's like they were almost as if they believed that because really that Week 17 game, it's like they lost their mojo completely because they were just walking over teams. They were on a perfect roll, and the train left the track, and they never quite found it. And Carolina came out so intense, so physical, and it was because if you look across the board, name me 3 players that played well. I can name you 3 players that played well. But if you think about it, of all the big names on the Cardinals, every single one failed. Carson Palmer played poorly. Larry Fitzgerald dropped 2 passes.
I was getting ready to ask
Peterson
you about him. Yeah.
Killed. Patrick Peterson, who was blanketing receivers all year, was made look silly like Ted Ginn a few times. And Ted Ginn was our 4th best receiver last year.
Yeah.
Calais Campbell was invisible. We had 3 guys that really stood out. David Johnson was impressive. J.J. Nelson stood out. And the punter, Drew Butler. I mean, goodness. That's it.
Yes.
That's literally the only guys who played well.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I did an article the day of the game, right before the game. I posted it right before the game. I filed it right before the game started with my keys to the game. And David Johnson was my key for the Carolina Panthers. I said they had to stop him. And he was as good as I expected him to be. He's a very exciting player. I don't want to jump a little bit ahead, but I do want to ask you, since we're talking about him, Bruce Arians had some interesting comments today or yesterday, I believe it was, this week, talking about off-season needs and what they were going to look for. He said that they wanted another David Johnson, which is completely understandable. He's absolutely fantastic. But what does that say about Chris Johnson and Andre Ellington?
Well, basically what it is, we've got 1 year left on Andre Ellington on his contract, and I think the coaching staff has sort of resigned themselves to believe that he can't stay healthy. When he's healthy and able to practice, he's good. But they want someone with that skill set. So they want someone, which kind of changes how Bruce Arians has looked at things. They want someone who is a dynamic runner, who can run inside and out, who's fast. Number 2, that can pass protect, and now number 3, that can be a threat in the passing game. Andre Ellington's going to be back. Next year. They would like to find someone else, especially since they're both relatively young. David Johnson's young. You never can really want to count on them as for certain, because that's what they did with Andre Ellington in year 2, and it was disappointing. Chris Johnson, I think it comes down to what he wants. How much money does his? I mean, he played really well for the first half of the season. So, is he going to be looking for another 2-3 year deal? Is he looking to be a bulk carrier, someone who gets a significant amount of carries, or is he willing to continue his career, be a role player, and share carries? Because the Cardinals certainly could use his veteran presence in the locker room. I thought that was one of the more underrated things that he's gonna. I didn't know how good he was going to be, but because of the type of career he's had, he has the respect of the locker room. He knows how to prepare. He's very good at preparation, and I believe that they're going to need to bring someone in to do that as it is, if they let him go. So if he's willing to stick around for a little more than the league minimum for a veteran, and to be a role player, there's a place for him. Otherwise, I don't think there will be.
He's not going to get a Jets deal. I think that everyone, except maybe Chris Johnson, understands that. And I wonder, too, what are his expectations? You mentioned Larry Fitzgerald. By comparison, and in all fairness, David Johnson was getting a lot of short underneath passes, but he was targeted 9 times in the passing game, caught every single thing that was thrown his way. Larry Fitzgerald targeted 7 times, ended up with 4 catches for 30 yards. John Brown was targeted 8 times. He only had 2 receptions. So, and some of that was, Carson Palmer not throwing the ball that well, and some of it was how fantastic the Carolina defense is. But the passing game, from my perspective, was a huge disappointment.
Yes, it was. I mean, name something that happened in the game and it was disappointing. They other than David Johnson, but even then it took a little bit to get him going, but they couldn't stay with the run after that because they fell behind so badly. The passing game was bad. The blocking was bad. They got beat on the defensive side of the ball. There was no pass rush. The secondary, which has been the strength of this team all season, the entire secondary played very poorly.
J.J. Nelson's interesting. I was looking at his stats on the season, the regular season. He had 11 receptions out of 27 targets for 299 yards, 2 touchdowns. Very promising young player. Or do you expect that they'll get him involved a lot more next year?
I think so, but I mean, he was a surprise to me, a complete surprise to me as it is this year, because if you look at his last year at Alabama at UAB, I mean, he had 35 catches in his last year there. When they drafted him, I said, "Oh, there's the returner," and then he kind of showed up a little bit on offense.
Yeah.
He flashed a little bit. I don't know how much more he will get involved this next year because you've still got Fitz, Floyd, and Brown.
Yeah.
He'll probably be their number 4 receiver, so he'll get some limited action. But moving forward, you might see him turn into their number 3 a year after that. He's still got, he's still got to put on a little meat.
Yeah.
He's barely 160 pounds.
Yeah.
And if he gets hit, he might die. I mean, really.
Yeah.
He might die if he gets hit hard.
Yeah, let's go ahead and talk about free agents since we're talking about, we've already broached that subject. And another guy that I had written about in my post-game wrap-up, Tony Jefferson, really, for an undrafted free agent, what a fantastic story. And I'm kind of surprised that that Arizona hasn't locked him up already. What's the status on him? Surely they'll make an offer and try to keep him.
Well, they don't really have to. He's a restricted free agent,
okay.
So they've got to control. And I imagine if I had to predict what they're going to do with him, they're going to put a second-round tender on him, which will pay him about $2.5 million this next year. And they'll, if another team decides they want to sign him to a deal, they'll get a second-round pick for him. But after that, we'll see beyond that. They haven't had to because they've already had his rights under control these first 3 seasons under, league minimum. Next year, they still can control him for another year. So there's really no need to do it, especially, they're going to lock up Tyrann Mathieu long term.
Yeah.
And then what is going to be of that other safety position? Are they going to put Dale Buchanan back deep again, or are they going to keep him at linebacker full time, or is he going to do the kind of the Charles Woodson type thing where he starts off at safety and base and he plays in the box as their dime linebacker as he did last year? So it's kind of interesting. Jefferson probably is starting caliber for most teams, for a lot of teams.
Yeah.
But with the not of safeties, especially since they have Rashad Johnson as a free agent, they've got Gerard Powers as a free agent. The one constant there is I don't think they even need to lock him up long term. They let him play out, have next year play out, and see how things go, and maybe they bring him back after that. Or Arians already said they wanted to add a guy at corner, a guy at safety with length and speed.
Yeah, so for some reason I was thinking he was an unrestricted free agent, but he is restricted. That's that is good. The second round is pretty steep for a guy that they kind of picked up off the street and gave an opportunity. But they've done really well scouting and bringing in young defensive backs. That's one of the strengths of their scouting department, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Steve Keim, his background is scouting, and so this is one of those things. They've been really good about getting contributions later in the draft. The first, second round has been kind of a question mark over the first couple of years, and it hasn't hurt them because they've had good talent on the team. We've still yet to get anything of any sort of importance out of Jonathan Cooper or Troy Nicholas.
Yeah.
And now DJ Humphries, their left pick last year, was essentially drafted as a redshirt. They're going to be counting on Jonathan Cooper and DJ Humphries moving forward, as it would surprise me if either Bobby Massey or Ted Larson returns next season.
Oh, yeah. Well, what is the deal with Jonathan Cooper? I know he had the injury the first season. What's going on with him?
Well, he's bordering on bust status, and it's more between. It's between his ears. The physical. I mean, the leg injury was significant. He'd never suffered any sort of injury like that before.
Yeah.
When he came back last year, he was still tentative. He was still on the ground. He wasn't being explosive. That finally kind of came around the last half of last year in practice. And so he wasn't good. I mean, you see the intensity on the field when he played last year. You see him run around, get into the second level, but he just wouldn't hit people. And even that happened this year. He's smart, but in the back of his head, he's still worrying about things. He's still thinking about things instead of just playing. So you'd see him get to the second level because he moves extremely well, but then just whiff. He needs to get a little stronger, and he needs to get a little more intense when he's on the field.
It's kind of interesting because Jonathan Cooper and Chance Warmack were widely regarded as the top offensive guards in that draft. Another guy that I was really high on, Larry Warford out of Kentucky, has been the best. I think he was drafted in the third round by the Lions. He's been
something like this. So Warford and even Kyle Long as well were both lesser talented and have been very, very good.
Very good, quite excellent. Kind of interesting. But offensive line is a position that you're seeing guys come out of college. Not all that. It is definitely a position that they're not developing as well at the collegiate level as you used to see.
No, especially at tackle. At tackle, you almost never, even the top prospects anymore who come, they struggle. Even you'll have a guy at left tackle. You see it almost always. They start at right tackle and take their lumps for a little bit. It seems to be the case anymore. And that's a result of. That's a result of the college offenses going more spread, less on the coverages, and there's a lot of reasons for that because they're going faster rather than the physicality.
Yeah, it is rather interesting. What other off-season changes do you expect?
Well, I don't expect anything in terms of coaching staff unless somebody gets hired somewhere else. I don't foresee that happening. On the offensive side of the ball, I don't see a whole lot happening. I don't know if Chris Johnson will return, but in terms of the main contributors on offense, the receiver is going to be pretty set. Jermaine Gresham, I don't know what his plans are, but they have Darren Fells, they have Troy Nicholas, they've got Gerald Christian, who they drafted the 7th round last year. They love his physicality, but he's on injured reserve all year.
Right.
Offensive line, you're going to see wholesale changes.
Yeah.
You've got Jared Hilder and Mike Upati, they're set. At center, right guard, and right tackle, we're likely to see changes. I do not foresee them bringing Lyle Sumling back. They're going to. Well, DJ Humphries is going to be expected. They're expecting him to be the starter next year. They're going to expect Jonathan Cooper to be the starter next year at right guard. A.Q. Shipley, he's an able center. We'll see what happens with him, but I expect them to bring in. Not a top level, but a mid to like journeyman type swing tackle and interior lineman to push both Humphries and Cooper, because there's one thing the Cardinals have been very keen on, and except for when it came down to Ellington, they expect their young players in year 2, year 3, but they'll bring someone in just in case because they don't want to necessarily count on them and have it be boom or bust.
Yeah.
The defensive side of the ball is going to be interesting because the number one priority, it seems to be this offseason, is going to be the pass rush.
Yeah, I saw Bersarian's comments on that. I was very curious.
I don't know what their plans are with Alex Okafor. Obviously, they're disappointed in whatever thing that happened to him that caused to be on the NFI list. Dwight Freeney, who knows?
Yeah.
But other than that, they don't have anyone. They like what Marcus Golden brings. I don't know if I still don't think he's a premier pass rusher, and so they need to add to that. Yeah. On the defensive line, I think they're going to stay more or less the same. I'm interested to see what they plan on doing inside, if they plan on continuing to have Dayon there, whether they draft someone, whether they bring someone in. And the secondary could look very different. Patrick Peterson is locked in. Tyrann Matthews locked in, well, at least once he's healthy. Justin Bethel's around for 3 more seasons. But Gerard Powers, Rashad Johnson, and Tony Jefferson all can hit the market. Jefferson likely is staying. And based on what Arians was saying, length and speed, that could signal where Powers and Johnson will be let to go somewhere else. Now, Johnson,
I really like Rashad Johnson. I would be he will get a ton of interest.
He'll get paid somewhere. He should, because he is he's very smart. He's put up some big numbers. He should get paid.
Yeah.
And when he hit free agency 3 years ago, he signed a really, really team friendly deal. I think it was like $4 or $5 million over 3 years, and he should get paid. And I don't know if the Cardinals are going to, especially when they're going to be. They've already committed a boatload of money to Patrick. They're going to commit a boatload of money to Tyron. Can you have a boatload of money somewhere else? Or are they going to move on and okay, we're going to move Dayon back. We're going to move Dayon back. We're going to keep Tony in and bring in another guy, and then have someone else come in to play linebacker.
Yeah, it's going to bear watching. And, there are a lot of teams out there who could use help in their secondary, and I agree. He's worth every penny that he gets, and I hope that he gets a great deal wherever he ends up. I want to get your thoughts on the Super Bowl before I let you get out of here. I'm excited about this. Listen, I think you and I talked about it. I was one of the ones who wasn't giving Denver much of a chance. And, boy, did they surprise me. I thought that they played a great game. But I just don't know that anybody can stop Carolina.
And I'm interested, Nick, as a fan. I'm a big Peyton Manning fan and would love to see him get ring number 2 because, great quarterbacks with one ring are like, but 2 rings really puts them into, oh, my goodness, yes, they're really good. And there's nothing, if he doesn't, it shouldn't take away anything from his career, but in terms of legacy, you look at a guy and you've got 2 rings. I want Denver to win. I like Cam Newton, but I want Denver to go out on top. But you look at that like, I didn't think they had a chance against Patriots, honestly. Yeah. And so I'm left doubting, well, wait, how good is their defense? Can they stop Cam Newton? I mean, because they have the elite pass rush. They do have the cover guys. My thing with when it comes to this matchup is I don't think the Denver offense is any match for that defense, especially since they aren't able to push the ball down the field. I mean, they can't do that with Peyton Manning. So they really can't do that. They can run the ball, but Carolina stops the run. And
the thing that does help them is Thomas Davis will probably play, but how effective is he going to be with his injury? And they've got a couple of they suffered some rather key injuries in your game, and so that
Roman Harper. Well, behind Davis, I mean. They still got Jack Thompson, so that linebacker core you don't lose very much, and so I want Denver to win, and I'm not going to be surprised if the Broncos win because they already proved me wrong. I didn't think there was a chance they were going to beat Denver, beat New England, but I fully expect Carolina because we've now seen a body of work. It wasn't just a weak schedule; they have just put a beat down on pretty much anyone.
Yeah.
And they're playing like the 2013 Seahawks team right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. They definitely are. Denver's defense is just so fantastic, and as good as the Seahawks defense is, and Arizona and some other teams that Carolina has faced, they have not faced a defense like Denver's yet. And I'm rather curious to see what they do with Cam Newton, how they handle, his particular skill set, which is very unique and so fantastic. It's going to be a great game. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, it should be a good one. I mean, there's bitterness inside me because the Cardinals aren't there, but at the same time, I can watch it and not really stress out because the last time the Cardinals went to the Super Bowl, it was really hard to watch, honestly.
I remember that. Oh, I remember that game. I remember it so well. You want to give me a prediction? I'm
not quite ready for prediction, but if I had to predict today, I'm going to say that the Panthers are going to come away with I think it's going to be a 24 to 8. Well, I'm going to say 24-20 game. It'll be within a possession. And I think Carolina takes that.
Yeah. Great stuff, Jess. It was short notice. Thanks again for joining me. I so appreciate it.
No problem. I appreciate having me on.
All right. Good night.
All right.